Welcome back to the Whatnots Reactor Core number 126, if you choose to accept it, because we're talking about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Melissa, this is kind of a long time coming for us with this. On one of our other podcasts, we covered all the way up through Fallout, but that was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
No, that was a long time ago. That was in like 2019. That was January 2019. I just re-listened to this episode. It's so quaint. Like the audio, my audio is not great. You sound fine. We spend most of the time talking about how my camera isn't working. Again, I think you looked fine. And we did not put enough respect on the name of Rogue Nation at that time. I've watched it again. Rogue Nation's fantastic. So
absolutely. Yeah.
You may go back and listen to the review show episode 39 with those caveats.
Ooh, yeah, that's an early one.
Yeah, it's very early.
But yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk about this whole time we've been like eventizing us going to the theater. I bought my tickets. I'm gonna go see it in IMAX. Oh my God, all this stuff. So I'm super excited. My name is Kyle Springer. I'm joined by Melissa Wilkinson.
Yes.
Melissa, what was your experience like seeing Mission Impossible?
I've seen it twice now. There was enough in the first time I saw it that I knew I wanted to see it again. I was planning on it anyway because the first time I saw it was in a digital IMAX theater, but then I had the opportunity to see it in like a real film projection IMAX theater at our local science museum. So I did it twice, and the second time I had a lot that I could know to look out for. Part of the excitement of this movie, with it being a part 1 of 2, is that there's a lot that's unresolved at the end of the movie, which gives my brain like mysteries to chew on.
Sure.
Like in the days since I've watched the movie, I've thought about it more than like any other movie I've seen so far this year. Like there's puzzles I have to figure out now.
What else could he jump off of? Goodness. Yeah, I've only seen it one time. I got to see it in IMAX as well. It was a digital one, so it was not the full grand true IMAX. It was the same theater that we went to when you were in town, and we went to the 4DX showing of Bullet Train. And it was interesting because I didn't mind the theater we were in. It was a big screen. There was big old stadium seats, but they were older seats. So they weren't as comfy, but the movie drew me in so much that I really didn't care. The thing that didn't make it the best experience for my partner and I was the row in front of us was a group of guys that multiple times people had to come and be like, that's my seat. You're in my seat.
Oh, no.
And so they like all moved down that way, and then they all moved down that way, and then they all moved down the other way. And it happened like 3 times. And it was just like, guys, this is assigned seating. How do you not know what seats you have? On top of that, they were all talking. They were like taking their shoes off and putting their feet up on like the seats in front of them. They had their phones on.
No.
This one guy was answering calls in the start and on speaker.
Excuse you. Are you a spy?
Yeah. And
what are you doing that's so important?
I was the one that spoke up, and I was like, get off your phone. Like,
Brave.
What are you doing? And thankfully it kind of quieted down a bit, but he's sitting there like with his phone up to his ear on speaker. I wanted so bad to just reach over and hit the end call button. I think that would have been hilarious, but
you have been disavowed.
Right. Yeah. This message has self-destructed.
Both of the showings I went to had a lot of older people, which was kind of charming to think that like if you were 40 when the first Mission Impossible came out, you are now
around since
living
the
large
90s.
in retirement in your 60s. Just the idea that there are people who have followed this franchise for maybe decades of their life It
Right?
was very
Yeah.
touching.
But despite this row of guys in front of us that were a little obnoxious, I had a great time. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think something that's interesting that I think people should know going in, especially if you're hesitant or if you have not kept up with the franchise, is I think this movie is very accessible to you.
I think so, yeah.
I think Mission Impossible Fallout, the one before this, is kind of the culmination of everything that came before it, especially movies 3 through 5. And this one kind of seems to start anew. They kind of move on past some of that stuff, as well as everything is just, they make sure to explain everything very clearly multiple times so that you know, okay, this is a key. It unlocks something, right?
Yes.
We're trying to find that lock. That's what we're doing. And I like that a lot because of how accessible it is. But I also really like Mission Impossible Fallout because it does not do any of that. It is the most like we're gonna use technical jargon and spycraft and all this stuff and in the weeds, and you have to be following it to really understand what is happening exactly. So if you were kind of worried about that, of like, am I jumping in on stuff? Will I know what's happening? I think you'll be fine.
I think the visual storytelling is one of the best aspects of this movie. Everything that is important, even if it's only temporarily important for like one set piece or like one plot point that is concluded and then the story moves on. Everything is portrayed to you very clearly. If it's supposed to stand out, it will stand out. It's fun.
Yeah. So yeah, they did a good job, I think, of explaining things and also not making it annoying that they're just telegraphing everything, right? Of just like, this is what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it.
Like the first time you see the keys, you don't realize those are the MacGuffins of the entire movie. When you first see them, they look distinct. Like they do stick out in your brain. And later you realize why they were designed the way they were designed and shot the way they were shot.
Spoiler free, is there what did you think? I mean, it sounds like we both really enjoyed it.
This has so much going on in it. I think the stakes are higher and sort of more personal and more invasive in a way that they haven't been before. For a series that constantly has to raise the stakes, this one is raising it in a bit more of a specific way. And it's also got a lot of real clown antics to it. Like
Sure.
There's a surprising amount of this movie is close-up magic tricks. There's a tiny car. I'm not kidding when this movie has real clown energy to it.
I will say that this is also maybe the funniest of the Mission Impossibles. Yeah,
there's a gag where these people have been
in them. Yes, this I still wouldn't say this is a comedy, but still, I think I laughed the most at this one.
Yes, there's a joke where these agents are trying to find Ethan and they're chasing him through this whole airport. And finally, they think they've caught up to him. And it's a shot looking at the agents. And they're like, where is Hunt? And you see Ethan Hunt running across the glass roof over them.
Right behind him, yeah. I thought this was great. I think, the stakes are raised appropriately. They continue the story in a way that I think makes sense. The Impossible Mission Foundation.
The Impossible Mission Force. The Impossible Mission Foundation sounds like a charity.
Well, thank you, Tom Cruise, for donating to my eyeballs this movie. My eyeballs, aka the Impossible Mission Foundation. No, I think the Impossible Mission Force has always kind of been this mysterious agency that doesn't really have much context in the world as we know it. They just kind of exist and we don't see anything else. And I think with Fallout and even Rogue Nation, when we start to get British intelligence in that, I think when we start to actually see the secretary who could disavow them, when we get Kittredge back, who was in the very first one, he was the one a couple weeks ago that I was like, his delivery, his performance feels a lot like what's his name in the
Agent
Matrix?
Smith.
Agent Smith. Yeah, there's a
I
certain
heard
cadence.
another person say this. It's not just you. I was listening to
interesting.
I've been listening to film podcasts about these. I've been listening to Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. I've tried to do a little research this week.
And so yeah, it feels like they kind of expand the intelligence community in a way that they really are like, well, what do we do with these people? He seems to keep going rogue. What is happening here? And he's destroying things. He's jumping off things. He just is this one-man army. What do we do about him? Can we control him? Can we stop him? And that is one of the central questions of this movie. And I liked that. I loved the stunts. To see them on the big screen is just incredible.
Yeah.
It's so loud. It's so, I have to say that when they're on a train, there's one scene you've probably seen it in the trailers and stuff like that. The train whistle. Oh my God, so loud.
I bought specific earplugs to go see this after I saw Fast 10 in IMAX, and I remarked that it was a little too loud, far louder than other movies I go to.
Yeah.
My friend, who's a big concert goer, recommended Loop earplugs to me, and they work great. You can still hear everything very clearly. It just knocks off a couple decibels.
Interesting. But yeah, I had a great time. My only kind of complaint, which is not much of one, is I think these movies, especially Fallout and this one here, Dead Reckoning, feel like a movie in 4 parts, where you think the third act is going to kind of be the end, and it can almost be the emotional end. It feels like you're on that trajectory and you hit, and then you do one more little skip, and that's the 4th and final act, which I don't mind. Right, because they're so fun to watch, but I think it might be a little long for some people, or it might have this false ending to it at one point, and you're like, oh wait, there's more, and it's like, yes, there's 40 minutes more after this. But yeah, that's my one complaint. I wish that trajectory was a little bit smoother. But this was fantastic. I liked it a lot.
Yes. I had a very, very good time. And like I said, it's really lived in my head. There's a lot of movies I go see. I have a great time in the theaters. And then 48 hours later, it's not really on my mind anymore. But this has been. This I continue to puzzle over. Yeah.
Last thing I will say is on that note, even though this is a part 1, it does feel like there is an ending to this.
Yes.
It is not left so up in the air at the end that you're just like, really? It don't end.
Yeah.
When's the next one? 2 years from now? It's
compared
not that bad.
Compared to Fast 10 and Across the Spider-Verse, this does feel more like a cohesive whole.
Yeah. I would say Across the Spider-Verse also felt like this is a good thing, but it left it in a status quo that he's right.
Not, I mean, I went to see Across the Spider-Verse with my older brother who loves the first movie but was not in tune enough to the world of film to know this was a part 1. And when it just stops, he was very mad.
This lets you know, like, up at the top, this is
it does say part 1 very clearly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, which I guess none of the other part 1s this year have done.
Yeah. Well, with that, I say we get into spoilers and stuff so we can start talking about this a little bit more in depth. Bam, there we are. Yeah, where do you want to start with this one? Lots of places.
There's a lot.
Right?
Like, there's a lot we could tackle, but for me, the biggest question is, do you think Ilsa is dead?
I don't know. I can see yes. I can see yes. I think they gave her a proper emotional arc to her story. Yeah, like that was the like end of the third act. Like that could almost be the end of the movie when she dies and the bad guy wins, right? I can see that because I think it's different. I mean, we also did have the other Faust in the James Bond movies. What's his name? Felix, right?
Felix Leiter.
Is his name Leiter? I thought it was also
Jeffrey
Faust.
Wright. That's Felix Leiter.
What's Felix Faust? Why am I mixing it? Is that some like cat comic or something? I don't know. Felix the
I don't
cat.
know what that is.
Good
this
Lord.
is a comic book you have read and I have not. I don't know who Felix Faust is.
I don't know. But like he is kind of that counterpart to James Bond, and he also had an emotional ending in a recent James Bond movie. So I can see them doing something similar because that character has always felt like a tip of the hat to him. But I don't know. That is the thing of like, it could be someone wearing a mask. It could be that they're still alive somehow. We don't know. And that's the thing of like Dead Reckoning Part 2. She comes back and this was all a ploy to get people where they wanted them and stuff like that. But I think that would cheapen the emotional stakes.
I am big team Ilsa's still alive somewhere. This is another reason why I'm like, I have to see this again before we record. Like there's stuff I want to track.
Sure.
And because this whole movie, like I said, it's close-up magic. It's hiding things. It's moving things. I think it thematically fits what we've seen set up in this movie. It thematically fits stuff we've seen in previous movies. And I watched a video. I listened to a couple podcasts. I've heard other people talk about this movie, and they're like, it's weird that the movie just sort of biffed Ilsa's death. Like she's been pretty important the last couple movies, and we like don't get like a real goodbye scene. Like she doesn't say anything to Ethan. It doesn't seem like her death impacts the rest of the story from that point forward. Like I guess she could come back, and I am big. I think they faked her death. Now I don't know how. And I'm not sure how they would have known to
situation.
Yes. But like with the Reichenbach fall, Sherlock is like preparing to fake his death for specific reasons. Here, it's trickier for me to piece together how they would know to plan ahead to fake Ilsa's death, like in far enough in advance that they would need to do so. So I don't have it logistically planned out
for her. What if she faked it for herself?
No, here's what I'm saying. Here's my major pieces of evidence. Welcome to my TED Talk. The movie starts with an Ilsa death fake out where you think she has been shot in that ambush there in the desert, like sandstormed out remnants of a city. And then you find out that Ethan just killed this assassin who was after Ilsa and like swapped their clothes. So we already have it set up.
They also had a wig that they put on it, so I don't know where they got the wig, but it's there.
I thought that was like that lady's hair. I don't know.
I don't know.
But we've already had it set up that we faked Ilsa's death once, and he went, and that wasn't just for the audience. He had it impressed upon Kittredge and everybody else. She's dead.
Sure. Right,
and what he tells her is, "You're dead. Go be dead." And then she just sort of finds him later, which is also something Kittredge says to Ethan is, there's a pattern between you two. You're always getting her out of trouble, and then she gets herself back in. Like, she finds Ethan later. She's like in the truck with Benji and Luther that comes to pick him up. And then when the final thing Ethan says to her before this big chase scene through the streets of Vienna where she ends up dying, the final thing he says to her while they're still in the club is run as far as you can. Like, I watched the scene, like when he finds her body after she's been stabbed, there's like, I know it's a PG-13 movie, but we don't see any blood. There's not like a final look they share. There's not a final word. Like, it is sort of really brief and glossed over when he finds her body. Like, it really feels like something is missing in that scene, where if this was a real death scene, even for characters who haven't had the level of importance, like Alec Baldwin had like a whole speech he got to give when he died in Fallout. Like, there have been other characters who've died in previous movies who had more of a real death scene or final connection or something like that. And that's missing.
That makes sense.
And after they take, and in the aftermath scene where Grace is back at that like little base they've set up, she's talking to Luther and she says, Ilsa died for me. And Luther says, no, you're alive because of her. That's the truth. Which feels like such a coded statement.
Right. It's true, but it's also, you're like dancing around some wording here.
Yes. I think that sentence was worded very specifically. Don't think about Ilsa being dead. Just think about Grace being alive. So I think it was like the main four. I think Ilsa and Ethan and Benji and Luther know what's going on. Grace doesn't. I think this is a secret they are keeping among the four of them, possibly as some sort of a show for the entity. Yeah. Like, you never know where there could be a camera hiding anywhere. So that's why, like, Ethan's out there on the balcony of the building where he had that nice moment with Ilsa. Who knows if there's a security camera from anywhere pointed at him. Like, they're all... And I don't want to act like they're mourning just as an act. I am sure that Ilsa probably is injured. They probably have no idea if they are ever going to see her again. There is a certain mourning for Ilsa as the agent that she was and for the relationship that they had with her. It's not entirely a facade. There's something really there to be sad about. But I think that's a very loaded line. And you think back to Julia in Mission Impossible 3. There's a scene where the villain like shoots Julia, and then you find out that was a mask. That's somebody else wearing a Julia mask. And then throughout all of Ghost Protocol, you think Julia died, and then you find out, no, they faked her death so that nobody would come after her. Everybody would believe she's truly dead. Yeah. I think they're just doing that same thing again. I think it's a repeating pattern. It's like we started the movie with one Ilsa death fake out that involved like a disguise. Like we put her clothing on somebody else. And now we're going for a longer term. You're going to believe she is dead. She's hiding somewhere.
Okay.
I really believe that's what's going on. I really believe she's coming back in part 2.
I can see that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't want to say I'm unconvinced, but I'm just unsure, right? That was not even something I thought about really until you mentioned it here. But I don't know, like that. I feel like that is kind of part of the stakes, and who knows? We will see. I have nothing else to say on that, I guess.
And it is something that the series has has done before to make you think somebody's dead and then they're not. I understand
Sure,
that is a card you can only play a certain amount of times, but with this one stretching across 2 movies, it may be a grander plan, a more intricate plan and a greater reveal for this one. Maybe they're making this one the granddaddy of all surprise that person's not dead.
Yeah. Which I appreciate because I like that they can now kind of do that with these 2 movies. They can set up some things in one movie that pay off in the next one, whereas they've done that to a much smaller scale with the other movies. Like each one is kind of its own story, but there's a few things that trail over. But I think I have to give a shout out to Pom Clementif in this. I loved her. She plays Mantis in the MCU. She's one of the villains in here, and she is just having a blast with all of this. She is driving this big MRAP truck that is just crushing cars and moving everything out of its way as she just goes full steam ahead. And the way she emotes with her face and just how excited she is, how big she can open up her mouth and just laugh and scream and do all of this stuff it's so engaging. It's just holy shit, she is having fun. Wow, I do not want to come across her.
She's such a specific threat. Yes, she's incredible in this. Her character is quiet. Like, she rarely speaks. She speaks enough that I wouldn't say she's the strong silent type, but she really, a lot of it is just like wordless emoting with such specific little facial maneuvers. Like the first time you see her, she's like glaring at Ethan from like across the city square, and she like twitches one nostril. Like, I don't know how you even do that. How skilled. And like whenever she speaks, it's in French, which is interesting.
She's a like, French actress. Like that's where
I did learn that.
From. Yeah.
Which is very cool. Her character's name is Paris. We really don't know anything about Paris, like why Paris is working for Gabriel, if it's purely a matter of money or of something else. I really like that this character survived to the end of the movie and that we couldn't see her again in the next one and like learn a little bit more about her and how she fits into this world. She's a lot of fun. And like I said, this is part of where the clown energy comes from. Just like the wordlessness, the big emotive actions. I love the cramped fight in that alleyway. We've seen hallway fights. I like that this one's like, let's smush it in. You only have like 2 feet on any side of you. And there's a gate at either end of this alleyway. You're in such a confined space for that one fight. And that's pretty cool.
This is kind of what I was talking about when we had discussed all of the Fast and the Furious movies, is that at some point it feels like it much more so in Fast and the Furious, but it feels like they got a checklist of like, we could do cars on ice, cars on sand, cars on the East Coast, cars on West Coast, cars on this
cars on ham, cars on eggs.
And this almost feels like it's starting to do that. I don't think it truly feels like a checklist of like, okay, now he jumps off a building, now he jumps off a plane, now he jumps off of this thing, right? It is more like, what would be an interesting set piece that would make for a good fight that is different from everything else that we've done? And it's like, what about this super cramped space that only is like one person wide? Just this hallway fight scene that you might see in like Old Boy or Daredevil, but they can't swing left to right. They have to go like up and down and stuff like that. And I think it's an interesting constraint to make that fight more challenging and visually interesting in a sense, right? Because it's much more cramped. And that's not what we're used to seeing on these big, like, he jumps off the tallest building in the world and it's great IMAX shot, right? And it's this like just open space, and here it is, just this super small claustrophobic thing.
I like that the movie can go big and can go small.
Yeah. Also, speaking of small, there is a car chase in here that I loved. He has this like super spy app to find him a new car, which is
I love
dumb
that the
and
options
ridiculous.
are: do you need a safe house, a safe car, or a safe boat?
Right. Yeah. And he picks a safe car, and it's like, okay, the next one is down the street and over here, and he like hits the button to like honk the thing, and it's this little Fiat 500, this just little small like punch buggy style car,
like bright yellow, looks like they're just driving a hunk of cheese around.
Right, yeah. And they're handcuffed together. They can't get in the car the way they want to. It's cramped again. And it is this long, it is this like mouse chasing a thing of moving cheese, right? Like just around the city. They're trying to drive. Haley Atwell is trying her best to just like, let me do the stunts. Like that was one thing that I thought of in this, is like, I know Tom does most of his stunts, right? Does that mean Haley had to do all of these stunts because she's handcuffed to him in all of these things? Yeah. And then I happened to see some article somewhere where that was like, doing stunts with Tom Cruise on set was terrifying. So I figured they were talking about her, but or that's something she was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna die.
I love
she's driving around, and this is where the funniest scene comes in. But please continue. You were about to say something.
To keep her from getting away, like he like handcuffs the two of them together, but in such a way that she has to drive a European car. Like she's the one who's on the left. Yeah. So like either she has to drive and she's like not up to it. You know, we don't learn. There's not a line about like, I lived in London. I took the tube everywhere. I don't know how to drive. Like she just doesn't like want to, isn't good at it. So either she has to do it or he has to do it. And she has to like weirdly have her arm like across his lap so that he can have like his arm that's handcuffed to her arm. Like there's no good way to do it. And like that at one point, the little car, like they have to drive down all these stairs. There's a baby they have to avoid. The classic get out of the way of the baby carriage bit. The car like twists and turns and flips over, and then they're suddenly on the opposite side of the car.
It's they like don't know how they switched in the midst of the car rolling over. And they're just like, what? How did we get here? It's the same set piece that Fast 10 did with the rolling bomb towards the Vatican. It's those same steps.
We're still in Rome. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a year for driving in Rome.
It makes me never want to go there. They go back to the I don't even know
Rome
what
too
it's
dangerous
called. Yeah, the set piece that again Fast and the Furious went to. John Wick went to.
John Wick was in Paris, but it's a similar like really tricky roundabout. Yeah,
I got you. Yeah, but it's so much fun to watch. That car chase is really funny. Just the antics that go on with that is ridiculous. When they finally like the MRAP crashes and stalls, and the other car like they're in there being like, okay, what do we do? Okay, well we need to turn around, and they try like hitting on the gas, and it's too much, and they're spinning, they're doing donuts, and it looks like this little small car just celebrating like, haha, can't catch me.
The car has a mind of its own,
right? Yeah. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, is this Herbie? Like what is happening here? It's so dumb, but it's so funny. I had a blast with that.
I love the cap to the end of that sequence, which is where they drive backwards down a tunnel into like a train track. Grace is able to like unhook the handcuffs with a paper clip, just handcuffs Ethan to the steering wheel while she escapes. He has to like let a train hit the car to get enough momentum to like break the steering wheel off of the car because he can't like uncuff himself. And then you see him just walking around the streets like holding a steering wheel that he is handcuffed to. It's so pathetic.
It really is. Yeah.
I like that Ethan gets these real, like a handful of these real sad sack moments.
Yeah, he's like, the things I do for the world, the things I do for love.
I like that he gets to be exasperated sometimes. Like he's you can tell he's disappointed that he gets this car and that the car isn't set up the way he liked, and he's like, God, I don't know where the guys at the base do with this. I don't know how this works. Just be patient with me.
And he's an older spy. Like, he's been doing this for a while. So when he gets in the car with no keys to just be like, okay, how does this car work? Right. You'd think he would know it because it's an older car, right? But it's also a European car. But then he hits a button and it's this like the tape deck like flips out and it's this like high tech like dial and buttons, and he's just like, oh God.
They're not labeled. It's just 6 rectangles you have to hit. Yeah.
He's just completely lost. It's like,
it's so funny.
Ethan, you're getting old. You're getting old, my dude. I mean, I'd be lost too.
Right, I couldn't
be honest, but
smart
still.
And European. I can't handle both of that type of car at once. Give me my dumb American car.
But yeah, I thought the comedy was great. The stakes just continue to get bigger and bigger. He knows he wants to make a jump onto this train. They speed up the train so it's moving faster, so he misses the point where he could jump on. So then he has to go somewhere else. Benji is just like, yep, just keep going up the hill. Yep, you got it. Keep going that way. And he's just like, right. Benji, there's no trail here. Where am I to go? Yep, just keep going. And he's like, I don't get it. Where? And he just, there's a big cliff, and he's just like, I'm at a cliff. What am I supposed to do? He's like, just keep going. He's just, I can't, Benji. What? It's like, what do you expect me to do?
Benji. Benji can't get a word in, and Benji's like, I am trying my best. And one of the funniest bits in the whole movie is when Ethan says, I've got to get away from this mountain. And then he does. He like jumps, parachutes off the bike. And then Benji calls him. He's like, Ethan, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to get away from the mountain.
He's like, what you told me to. Keep going. That's what I'm doing. They're so exasperated, which is great. But like, even that, from when the train stops and the bridge explodes and everything is falling and they're trying to climb up and they get to the food and it like all the oil is falling out and making everything slippery and hot. It's just like, oh man, like it's one thing after another. And man, just from the like, now they're stuck in that one car that's like hanging by a thread and there's a piano. It's like the classic, like piano is about to fall on them. Don't look up, don't look down. I'm going to move over to this other side and please just jump to me. And they're just like, I don't know if I can do it. It's like, just do it now. Please don't look up. Whatever you do it now. Go.
That final train sequence, it's such a Titanic stunt. I mean, Titanic in its scale and its impressiveness, and also that it reminds me of at the very end of Titanic when the boat is just straight vertical and then breaking off, and they have to go through a couple different train cars to like get back up on stable ground. And I like the escalation of not just the situation they're in, how far they have to go to get out of the situation. And that each car has got like, it's the kitchen car. There's pots, there's pans, there's knives, burners are on, there's a gas leak, there's actively bubbling deep fat fryers.
Yep.
They're on the Orient Express, a place where I didn't know they would deep fry things. And then there's like the piano car, and you see the piano earlier in the movie. They seed it for you, and you have no idea you are looking at a setup. I think this movie is very good about that.
Mm-hmm.
They just show you things, and you don't know, oh, that's a threat, that's a MacGuffin, that's going to come into play later. But when it does, you do always recognize it. And having a piano fall on you is just such classic Looney Tunes silent film
Absolutely.
antics.
Yeah.
I love that that's the sensibility that these movies had. It's a real circus of a movie from beginning to end. So much is happening. You've got all these little tricks and physical bits and just like wordless, beautiful comedy gags.
Absolutely. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and actually talk about the threat in this movie, the bad guy. So it's kind of a two-parter, right? Because we have this artificial intelligence that has kind of gone rogue, and it has access to basically everything. And it's not going full Ultron where it's like humans need to be destroyed, but that's I think one of the mysteries that is still hanging of we don't know exactly what its end goal is here. We don't know what it's doing.
I love that the entity is so far just doing the equivalent of like ding dong ditching people. Yeah. It's just letting you know it's there. It's like, there is a threat. I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to let you know what I want yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is terrifying, kind of. But yeah, I think having the threat be an artificial intelligence is an interesting villain for the series, for a spy movie that almost feels like a bigger threat. It feels like a superhero kind of thing, which, I mean, let's be honest, that's kind of what Tom Cruise is doing in all of these things. He just, all of these stunts that he does. It's just like, how? But yeah, it's kind of just kind of baffling of what this thing is and what it wants. We see this whole opening sequence. There's a good like 20-minute sequence before the title card comes up, and it is like a brief explanation of what this thing is. It's an artificial intelligence. It's like, it started out as I think like a Russian defense thing on one of their submarines, and yeah, it did this whole thing where it like completely faked another submarine on radar that was attacking this one thing, but it wasn't there. Like the whole situation was terrifying.
I love that cold opening. Literally cold.
Great.
We're in the Arctic somewhere. To see a torpedo coming at you and you're bracing for impact and you're like, who sent this torpedo? Where is it coming from? Like, why can't we evade this thing? And then right as it's coming towards you on the radar, it just disappears.
Nothing happens. Yeah. And it's just like, what? And then the one you shot at it is now circling back on you because there was nothing else out there. And it's like, well, you're the closest thing. So
yes,
there you go.
Seek your heat. Here I come.
Yeah, like I think it's a good threat. It feels very modern, feels very of this decade. Which I think was a good move for them to do. But on top of that, we also have this kind of mysterious character from Ethan's past. They do a few flashbacks. He wasn't actually in like the first or second movie, was he?
No. Gabriel is new.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, we get these. Not even fully flashback. It's just imagery. We learn no information. Just that apparently how Ethan got into the IMF is that Gabriel killed this woman he was close to. We don't know if they were romantic partners or maybe just close friends. We don't know exactly what she meant to him, just that she meant a lot. He cared about her very much. Gabriel killed her and seemingly framed Ethan for it. Or like left him there with the blood on his hands coming to her there at the scene. And there was no other evidence to point at anybody besides Ethan. And that's when he was offered the choice
Mhm.
of, you are very skilled. We can use you. You can join the IMF, or you can just like go to jail forever.
Basically.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's all we learned. I would have liked a tiny bit more context about that in this movie. I know it's on the way. Of course, not knowing everything else that's in Dead Reckoning Part 2, I can't really judge, but I would have just liked a tiny
Like to
bit
see a
more
little bit
here.
more, yeah.
Although I can't imagine that would be a fun, like, whole flashback cold open to Part 2, showing us what that was.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I also wish we had more information on that from earlier movies. But of course, like, they didn't have that foresight to put those in like movie number 2 or movie number 4, right? Yeah, it's interesting. It makes it feel very much like a movie or a set of movies that are about what is Ethan's legacy going to be. Because I was thinking about this too, of like, we recently got interviews with Tom Cruise being like, I love doing this. They specifically asked him about like, what do you think of Harrison Ford's comments being like, I don't want to stop making movies and stuff like that. And he was like, Harrison's a legend. Like, he's doing great stuff. I want to be just like him, in the sense that I want to be 80 still making
Yeah. Sure he will be.
I don't think there's really going to be a passing of the torch, in a sense of like, okay, now Haley Atwell is the star of the Mission Impossible movies from now on, right? I don't think there's going to be anything like that. There might be a spinoff or like a TV show or something.
Or maybe a time where it's more of an ensemble, like Ethan Hunt's still in the mix, but maybe he's doing a little less.
Sure, yeah. He's their handler rather than the one. But I think that's a possibility. But I also think that this is going to be Ethan's story. I don't think, like, I feel like this is a franchise that Tom Cruise has such a vice grip on, right? He has such a chokehold on this of like, that's him.
That sounds very aggressive. He has been not only not only a star, but also a producer. I think this was like his project back in the 90s, and maybe it started pretty strategic. Like, I need to have a franchise that's mine. I can get the rights to this old spy show from the 60s. We can do a lot with that. And then he's developed a good working relationship with Christopher McQuarrie. And he's like, okay, no more director jumping. I want it to be just Christopher McQuarrie. But that's worked out. Like, the later half of the series has been some of the best stuff.
So, to my point, I feel like this is his baby. Like, this is his. And I don't know if it's going to be the like forever franchise that like even the MCU is trying to do, where they're starting to pass the torch and move things along. I think like we will get a definitive end of like,
yes,
this was the Tom Cruise era of Mission Impossible. If 20 years down the road, you guys want to like reboot it up and do your own thing, it can be a new actor, it can be something like that. But I think we are like, it's going to be him. And so that's what I meant by this movie, and what I assume will be in the next one. It feels like, what is Ethan Hunt's legacy? What is he leaving behind here? And it is all about like his relationships to other people, what he means to those people, what they mean to him, as well as this idea of like, do you end up killing this person that basically ruined your life from the start? This is the guy that started it all. And the way things have worked out is you can kill this one guy and get the satisfaction that we know you want, but also you won't get the information that we need to then stop this AI threat that will potentially destroy the whole world here. And also, you'd kind of be a criminal. But right, like that almost feels besides the point. But it is this like emotional stakes that I don't feel like the villains have truly had beforehand.
True.
Except for like, I've kidnapped your wife. Now what will you do, Ethan? Haha.
Yeah, we haven't had anything that like goes back that far. Is this and has had that much of an impact on Ethan's entire life.
Yeah.
And I like that Ethan is a fairly like even-tempered person. Like it's not until Luther like pulls him aside, like, as your friend, Ethan, I really have to impress upon you that you can't kill this man. And he's not necessarily accusing him of wanting to do so. He's just warning him, like, don't. This, like, if that was on your mind, get it off.
Not the best move, yeah.
Yes. And you don't necessarily think that Ethan would have. Like, Ethan doesn't seem like the sort of person to kill somebody just for vengeance. Now, if there was truly, like, an active threat. I mean, think about when they, like, put Solomon Lane in a glass prison.
In this, yeah.
But I think Ethan seems like the type to, if we can put you in prison, I would prefer to do that. I would not prefer to kill you.
Right.
But yeah, it is very personal. And I like that that's the angle they're taking with the entity as well. One of the most truly chilling, threatening things in the movie is when Benji is like on the computer giving Ethan directions to like run throughout Vienna. And he's telling him like, okay, Ethan, like go right, go left. And then the entity takes over the call and is like, oh, nope, sorry, Ethan, not that way. Go this way and turn around and go left and right and left and right. And Benji's screaming, no, Ethan, that's the entity. That's not me. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that the entity is taking over, it's not like replacing world leaders or anything like that. It is just breaking into a one-on-one conversation. Like the fact that they've shown the entity acting on a much more interpersonal scale instead of a huge global scale, I think that's a great choice. And it makes it feel like so specific, so personal. And, you know, after lockdown, after spending all that time, you know, far away from all our loved ones during the pandemic, when all you have is like a digital device to connect yourself with people who are close to you, what if that broke down? I know like AIs have become so much more of an, they're like part of an entirely different conversation right now. But thinking back then, what if I just called my mom on the phone and there was a chance it wasn't really my mom? Like that's more terrifying than like anything else this AI could do. I think they're making a great choice with what, even though we don't know the end game, I like how they are showing us how the entity is truly a threat to like tearing the team apart from the inside. Yeah.
Here's not really a prediction, but a thing that they could do with this that I kind of really like the idea of. It is that like this series has gotten more and not more and more high tech. They've always had the masks and the high tech goggles and glasses and all that stuff. But with this kind of breakdown of communications and digital devices, it's almost forcing them to do more like old school spy stuff, which I kind of like the prospect of that, like them having to return to that style of like spy stuff. I think that's really neat to then almost be like, let's make it a smaller movie, like this finale, make it just real emotional, personal stakes, and. We know that there will be a bunch of stunts that they do in this next one.
The one thing I have learned about part 2 is that Ethan is flying an old school biplane because it doesn't have a computer on it that the entity can hack. So they're going to be doing stunts on like an old like early 1900s biplane. That sounds so fun. Who else is doing that?
Benji's flying the plane while Tom is on the wings, fist fighting someone.
They're all wearing scarves now. Like when you get in a biplane, you just have to have a scarf. It comes with the plane. Scarves are complimentary.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, like I like that idea. Like you said, like Mission Impossible is this old like 60s IP, and even in the 60s version, I'm sure they had like gadgets and different stuff that like it looks like a pen, but really it's a laser, right? Like I want them to go back to like that kind of stuff, like old 60s James Bond era, like, or like it is about the like you have some kind of weird pen device that will do something.
I do like the idea of seeing like how far they can get into tech without having an internet connection.
Yeah.
Like that area of techie gadgets, like with that limitation on it, sounds really fun.
Yep, indeed. Yeah, I think that could be a blast. But yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about another good set piece for the Entity, which is when Benji has to solve all those riddles. I love when he like opens up this cipher and he's like talking to Luther on the comps and he says, it says you are done. And Luther's like, not yet, we aren't.
Not like yet, immediately.
I love Luther's energy. Luther is just like everybody's dad. He's so comforting. He's there to lift you up. But then Benji says, no, D-U-N-N. It's my last name. This thing was like designed for me. And later when the Entity breaks into that call and Ethan finally realizes, wait, you weren't Benji. The Entity says in Benji's voice, no, I'm not, but you are done. And then it like attacks Ethan. Like I so like funny. That twist. I like that they looked and like, wait a minute. What's Benji's last name? Oh, we can use that. Like
that's it. We're done. Script is done.
Right.
That's it.
They're like, wait, nobody's done a done pun before? Okay. That's big on the to-do list for movie 7. Very efficient. They're making use of everything that they've got on the table in front of them, including that.
Yeah.
And when again, riddles. I love the aesthetic of the riddles among all the other like clown circus antics going on in here. Just riddles. Not enough movies have riddles in them that you have to solve.
It was a good way to separate the team.
Yeah.
I
do really like that Benji and Luther are trying to like keep this between themselves and not tell Ethan. And they have to tell him at the last minute, and he's like, guys, a nuclear bomb is something you can interrupt me for. It's okay.
Oh, man.
But when the bomb asks him, what is most important to you? And he says, my friends. It's a touching moment, but it's also kind of revealing because you realize you don't know anything about Benji's personal life. Like you know exactly what Ethan would say. The most important people to me are my friends. The rest of the cast of the movie. But I was wondering if that would be some sort of a reveal, like, does Benji have like a family somewhere we've never met? And he's like, that would be the honest truth. I just never talk about my wife and kids that I have somewhere.
Yeah.
And then to learn that at least our main characters are in the IMF because they were criminals of some kind and were offered this choice. Like we're learning that about Ethan. We can imagine that for Luther. He is brought in as this like, sort of on the outs, like hacker star. Yeah. But we imagined Benji was just like a guy who
an IT like, guy that like applied for some job on the internet and didn't really know what he was getting into. I mean, we see him there like playing video games like while he's supposed to be working.
Right. If you had to be on this job as like the other option besides going to jail for murder, I wouldn't imagine you'd sit at your desk playing Call of Duty.
Right.
That's such a fascinating thing to introduce. Like how many people does that apply to? Is every IMF person we've met so far, like was Brandt a criminal? Was Paula Patton a criminal? Is this
Yeah.
everybody's backstory? Is this every like little tech guy we see in the IMF office? Did they all go through this? But it adds a dimension to Benji that's never been there before. And I am curious to, among all the other things that part 2 has to explore, getting to learn a little bit more about that. Like, what is Benji's story? How did he get here?
Yeah. We might get a few more details about that stuff in this next one, because like I said, it does feel a lot more personal than what we've gotten in the past. I don't know if we'll get like a lot, because if you do it for Benji, you then have to do it for Luther, you then have to do it for potentially Ilsa, who's maybe still alive, you have to do it for someone else, right? Yeah, I don't know. I like the introduction of Grace, of Haley Atwell's character.
I do like Grace. I will say that the first time I watched this movie, I spent most of like the first hour wondering if it was going to be revealed that she was Ilsa's sister, until they like actually meet each other, and then I'm like, okay, that's not it. I was just wondering if there was some personal connection why we were spending so much time with her. I'm like, is there a reason why it's also like another British lady of around this age? Do her and Ilsa have some sort of a connection? Because there's also the mystery of Ilsa stole the key. Why did she do that? What did she want it for? And I think it's just because she thought she got some message from her old like MI6 colleagues that like led her to believe she needed to steal it, and then you find out that was the entity just playing her. Right. So it's not that much of a mystery, but
yeah,
that was on my mind during the first hour, which I like, that you can spend the movie guessing about so many things, and then even after it's over, you have more to guess about until you get to see part 2.
Yeah. Man, there's still so much that I want to know about this. I cannot wait to see how the stakes just get even higher in this next one.
Higher, but like really specific and personal.
Yes.
I like that that's the direction they're going.
Yeah. And if that's the last Mission Impossible they make, I'm sure it'll be a good one. If we get more of them down the road, which sounds like we might, I'm excited to see where it goes.
I'd like a return more to the Ghost Protocol. Ghost Protocol is kind of this in-between one where it feels more like the Christopher McQuarrie era of things, but it doesn't have the same gravitas to it. It's a much lighter, more playful movie. I'd like if Dead Reckoning Part 2 was like the culmination of a dramatic storyline, and then every couple of years we just do one more fun adventure.
Sure. Yeah. I can see that happening for sure. I think that's all I have to say on Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
I just have one final shout out. I really like the White Widow's bodyguard.
Sure.
I think his name's Zola. I just like watching the movie again. I noticed that he seems to genuinely care about her, be actively concerned for her. Like when it's Grace disguised as the White Widow, we learned her name's Alana. I don't know if we knew that in the last movie. And like she's acting weird and like denying the payment that Kittredge was going to offer her. Like the Zola seems genuinely concerned about like, are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Are you sick or something? He's not like, I wanted that money. That money is for us. Like he seems genuinely invested in her well-being. I just like whatever that little dynamic is.
Yeah. He was good. He genuinely seemed to care. He seemed to be strung along though in ways that he also didn't care about.
Right. It's just sort of exasperated.
He's exasperated. He's used by Grace to like put the key in his pocket. He has no idea. Like all of this stuff. He's just kind of there and along for the ride. He's not like doing all of these big stunts. He's not like reloading his fists like what's his name did. Like he's just
Henry Cavill, one of a kind.
There. Yeah, he's just like, what's happening? Why are you? Why did you say that? You
Well,
you
right,
wouldn't normally
just
say that.
confused.
What's
Yeah.
going on?
I felt for that guy. I really liked those two agents. I think their names are Briggs and Degas. How one of them's just like putting his fingers in people's mouths, trying to peel off faces because he's certain that's Ethan Hunt in disguise. He's like a shoot first, ask questions later guy, and Degas just like Degas trying to be sensible and like be polite to everybody. Like when they have to get everybody off the train because the bomb's going to go off, he goes into the car. He's like speaking to everybody in like French, like, excuse me, everybody, we have a situation. Please calmly proceed to the end of the car. And the other guy comes in and just like shoots. You see Degas like throw up his hands.
This is what
like those two.
I will say about them. First of all, Shea Wiggum, fantastic.
Great.
Wiggum, is that how you say his name?
I think I've heard Wiggum.
Wiggum. Fantastic. He seems to do this type of role a lot, and he's great at it. But this is also something I kind of noticed about this Mission Impossible movie is that different aspects of the film, different characters always felt like an homage to something else. We have Grace, who's kind of this Catwoman-like figure. We have someone named the White Widow. Just at least by name, somewhat reminiscent of the
yes.
God, why my mind just
Black
completely
Widow, Natasha Romanoff.
Itself. Yeah. God, yeah, like there's stuff like that. He does the Akira slide at the cliff. Like to have that stuff in there, but the inclusion of these two cops feel like, and I don't remember the character's name in it, but the cop that is always following Lupin in the animes, like just this, he's always right there, the one step behind, or he gets him and then has to like somehow team up with him because there's something else happening and he just can never get him, right? That's kind of what it felt like. And I almost liked, I mean, not almost, I did like the inclusion. I hope that character returns and we get to see more of him as he's just continually chasing Ethan around the world. Like, I know he's not like a small town or like a small time like beat cop. Like he is, I think they were like Interpol or who knows what. Yeah. But that's kind of what he felt like, is just this like small time beat cop, just like, now we have to go to Rome. Now we have to go here. God, what is happening? Book a plane. Like, here we go. And I liked that a lot. It was great.
I did like seeing how other people in the government and in similar fields think about Ethan and the IMF. Like, I like seeing those two. Yeah. Degas, like, I don't know, like, if he's like gone rogue so many times and saved the day so many times, maybe he's right. Maybe we just flat out like trust Ethan, and the other guy's like, no. And then to you get Carrie Elways in here, and he's like, what do you mean you just leave word with this other institution? Why can't I order them around? Shouldn't I be allowed to order them around and not just like call and hope they pick up the message?
Yeah. I mean, that is the whole, like, the IMF is just this weird, bizarre organization. We don't really know how they fit in with things, if they do at all. And I like that we're starting to get more context or like who they are and what they do, and just the absurdity of their existence, right? So good stuff. Well, I think that about wraps us up for our reaction, our spoiler cast for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it. But Melissa, where can the people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities.
There you go. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter. I'm on Threads at that same name as well. We are at The Whatnots on Twitter and at The Whatnots Official on Threads if you want to follow us there. If you're watching this on YouTube, we have plenty more videos over there for you to check out. Please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. But this has been number 126 of the Whatnots Reactor Core. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.